What if the cleanest, safest, most impressive city in the world could also quietly break your heart? Singapore looks like a dream from the outside. Shiny towers, spotless streets, bubble tea on every corner, and a passport that opens almost every door on earth. People post their move there like they just won the lottery. But nobody really talks about what happens after the excitement fades and the real bills, the real weather, and the real loneliness show up at your door. I lived through it. I watched other expats live through it. And I want to walk you through 10 things that nobody warns you about before you pack your bags. This is not about hating the country. This is about telling you the truth so you can make a real decision instead of a romantic one. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why so many people leave Singapore just a few years after arriving, even though it looks perfect in every photo. Point 1. The price tag nobody warns you about. Let us start with the thing that hits you first, your wallet. Singapore is one of the most expensive places on the entire planet to actually live, not just visit. Rent alone can eat almost half of your income if you want a decent apartment in a normal area. A simple bowl of noodles at a hawker center feels cheap, but the moment you want a real grocery cart, a gym membership, or a night out with friends, the prices climb fast. Owning a car is almost a fantasy for regular people because the government charges you a certificate just for the right to buy one, and that certificate alone can cost more than most people's entire yearly salary back home. Add high rent, high insurance, and pricey school fees for anyone with kids, and suddenly that dream salary you were offered does not stretch nearly as far as you imagined. Many newcomers land, feel rich for the first month, then realize their savings are disappearing twice as fast as they expected. Point 2. The weather that never lets you breathe. Once the money shock settles in, the weather starts working on you next. Singapore sits almost exactly on the equator, which means there is no winter, no spring, no gentle breeze season, just heat and humidity every single day of the year. Stepping outside can feel like walking into a warm, wet blanket, even at 7 in the morning. Your clothes stick to your skin, your hair gives up within minutes, and simple things like walking to the store turn into a sweaty chore. People who move from cooler countries often describe the first 6 months as their body fighting a constant battle against the climate. Air conditioning becomes your best friend and your biggest enemy at the same time, because you start avoiding the outdoors altogether just to stay comfortable. What sounds exotic in a vacation brochure becomes exhausting when it never changes, day after day, month after month, with no seasonal relief in sight. Point 3. A country the size of a small neighborhood. After you adjust to the heat, the next surprise is just how small everything actually is. Singapore is a tiny island, smaller than many single cities in other countries, which means space is treated like gold. Apartments are compact, storage is limited, and the idea of a big backyard or a long countryside drive simply does not exist here. You can cross the entire country in under an hour on the highway, and once you have explored it, you have basically seen it all within your first few months. For people who grew up with wide open spaces, mountains, or long road trips, this can feel like living inside a very nice, very clean box. There is no escape to nature without hopping on a plane first. That constant feeling of limited space can quietly wear on your mental health long after the initial charm of convenience wears off. Point 4. Rules for almost everything you do. Speaking of that clean, organized feeling, it comes from somewhere, and that somewhere is an enormous list of rules. Singapore is famous for being strict, and that reputation is fully earned. Chewing gum is heavily restricted, littering can bring serious fines, and even something as small as jaywalking or forgetting to flush a public toilet can technically get you in trouble. The rules are part of why the country feels so safe and tidy, but living under that much control day after day can feel suffocating if you grew up somewhere more relaxed. Freedom of speech is also far more limited than most Western visitors expect, and criticizing the government publicly can carry real consequences. What feels like refreshing order during a 2-week vacation can start to feel like a cage once you realize you are the one who has to follow every single rule, every single day, for years. Point 5. The work culture that never clocks out. Once you settle into daily life, the job itself brings its own shock. Singapore has one of the most intense work cultures in Asia, often compared to places like Japan and South Korea. Long hours are normal, weekend emails are expected, and taking your full vacation days can sometimes feel like you are letting your team down. The hustle mentality is baked into the culture from a young age, and it shows up everywhere from finance to tech to hospitality. Many expats arrive expecting a 9 to 5 balance similar to their home country, only to discover that staying late is basically part of the unwritten job description. Burnout is common, and because the cost of living is already so high, many people feel trapped working long hours just to keep up with rent instead of actually enjoying the country they moved to in the first place. Point 6. Making real friends is harder than you think. With work eating up so much of your time, building a real social life becomes its own uphill battle. Singapore is full of transient expats who come for a contract and leave within a couple of years, which makes deep friendships harder to form. Locals often already have tight friend groups built since childhood, and cracking into those circles as an outsider takes real time and effort. Social life can also feel expensive and scheduled, since spontaneous hangouts are rare when everyone is exhausted from work. Many newcomers describe feeling surrounded by people, yet strangely isolated, surrounded by acquaintances, but missing the kind of close friendships they had back home. That quiet loneliness rarely shows up in glossy travel videos, but it becomes one of the most common reasons people eventually decide to pack up and leave. Point 7. The pressure cooker called school. If you think work is intense, wait until you see the education system. Singapore is famous worldwide for producing top test scores, but that success comes from an incredibly high-pressure environment for kids. Students often attend extra tuition classes after regular school hours, sometimes studying more hours in a week than a full-time adult job. The competition starts shockingly young, with certain exams shaping which schools a child can even attend later in life. Parents who move here with children are often stunned by how stressful the system feels compared to more relaxed education styles elsewhere. Even families who admire the academic results often end up worried about their child's stress levels, sleep, and overall childhood joy. What looks like educational excellence from the outside can feel like an exhausting race from the inside. Point 8. Missing home more than you expected. Beyond the daily grind, there is a quieter struggle that catches almost everyone off guard, which is simply missing home. Singapore sits far from many Western countries, meaning flights back to see family can take an entire day or more, along with a hefty ticket price. Time zone differences make casual phone calls with parents or old friends surprisingly difficult to schedule. Missing birthdays, holidays, and small everyday moments back home starts to weigh on people more than they expected before moving. Even with video calls and messaging apps, there is something about physical distance that technology cannot fully replace. Many expats describe a strange kind of grief that creeps in around the 1-year mark, once the excitement fades and the reality of being far from loved ones truly settles in. Point 9. Becoming a permanent resident is not easy. Just when you think you have adjusted to everything, another wall appears if you ever want to stay long-term. Singapore makes permanent residency and citizenship genuinely difficult to obtain, even for people who have lived and worked there for many years. The approval process can feel unpredictable, with strong applicants sometimes rejected without a clear explanation. Even after gaining permanent residency, certain benefits and protections still favor full citizens over long-term residents. This uncertainty means many expats live for years without ever feeling fully secure about their future in the country. Job stability, housing choices, and even retirement planning can all feel shaky when you are never entirely sure how long you will actually be allowed to stay. Point 10. The beautiful trap of comparison. Finally, after all of this, there is one more thing that quietly affects people the most, and that is constant comparison. Singapore is polished, efficient, and impressive in almost every visible way, which makes it incredibly easy to compare your own life against that shiny surface. Neighbors seem wealthier, co-workers seem more successful, and the entire city seems to be moving faster than you can keep up with. That environment can create a subtle but constant pressure to achieve more, earn more, and appear more successful than you actually feel inside. Many people who move here describe a strange emptiness despite living somewhere so clean and modern, simply because the external perfection never quite matches their internal happiness. That gap between how good life looks and how good life actually feels is often the real reason people quietly decide to move on. Singapore is not a bad place, and honestly, it is an incredible achievement built by people who worked incredibly hard to create something safe, clean, and impressive out of a tiny island. But impressive does not always mean easy, and beautiful does not always mean happy. The heat, the pressure, the price tag, and the quiet loneliness are all real parts of the story that rarely make it into the highlight reels. If you are thinking about moving here, go in with open eyes instead of just open excitement, because the truth will always serve you better than the fantasy. I hope this video gave you the honest picture that I wish someone had given me before I packed my bags. If it helped you see things a little clearer, smash that like button, drop a comment, and tell me your own experience or your biggest question about moving abroad, and subscribe so you never miss the next honest story we share together.